Troubleshooting your gas start diesel can be a little tricky, so we're going to go ahead and look at a few things you might want to look for here if you're having trouble with either the gas side or the diesel side. Since getting these things started on gas is probably one of the most important things, we'll start with the sparking system. So as I've covered previously, one of the trouble spots that I've found is underneath this cover on the front of the intake manifold is a contactor disc. Sometimes these post connections go bad or that disc goes bad and it does not make contact. So if you do not have voltage to your coil from your switch, check these two wires here. And if they are not passing voltage from this post to this post when it is in the gas side, then what I've seen people do either is to take one wire from the key directly to the coil, or take this wire from your switch and then just put it on this post directly to the coil. One thing to remember is that when you switch over to the diesel side, your coil will still be on. So if you don't want your coil running when you're on the diesel side, you have to manually turn off your switch. It will not happen automatically like it would if this cover and that contactor disc were working correctly. Another thing about sparking system is that the distributor runs in a counterclockwise rotation. So in this case, my upper right is my 1, and 3, instead of being here in the lower right, is going to be in the upper left. So 1, 3, 4, and then 2. You can start 1 anywhere you want to, doesn't matter, as long as that 1 is firing when 1 is supposed to fire. That's really about all I found on the spark system that has gone wrong. Now the gas system, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So on the back side here, there's a couple linkages that you want to make sure that are all connected. If they aren't connected, probably going to lend you some sort of problem. I will try to show on another bare block that I have some things that you can't see because the manifold's on here. But gas. So one thing you can do, easy to see if you're getting gas into the carburetor through the needle, is to open up the little petcock on the bottom here. If gas runs out, gas is flowing through. If not, then the needle inside is either sticking for some reason, or the linkage on the back side is not releasing that needle out of the seat. Another thing is if it does not want to stay latched on the gas side. That lever right there, I'm going to try and show it here. This lever right here, it must be loose. It must be free. If it is not, you can take this bolt out right here. Bolt right here, take it out, and then spray some penetrant of your choice in there to get it loosened up. There's also a spring here. If this spring is missing, it will not work correctly either. So what this does is when you pull back in the gas side, it latches it into the gas side. Otherwise, when you pull it back at the gas side, it'll spring right back forward to the diesel side again. So make sure the spring is intact, and make sure that this little arm here moves. Also, relating to that, on the diesel side, if you go to push it forward to diesel and it doesn't really snap forward to diesel, this spring here is either missing or broke or not working or all of the above. So make sure that this spring is there and intact as well. It'll allow you to seamlessly, hopefully, switch over to diesel. Sparking plugs. So the sparking plugs on this are not easily accessible by just going into the side of the engine like a gas model. I found the best way to do it is to pull the intake manifold. So the 2 bolts or nuts, depending on what your setup is, pull them off, undo the fuel line from your carburetor, undo your choke, and just take out these 4 nuts. Manifold comes off. Easy access to all of your spark plugs. On the diesel side, so fun. Alright, so fuel is first going to come into your water separator here. Water trap, fuel water separator, whatever you want to call it. This little petcock here on the top with the hole, which in this case is filled by B, but there's a little tube that extends down to the bottom of the bowl here. So that's handy because if there is water in your water trap, you can empty it out without having to disturb this bowl. You just open this, and then fuel or the water, which is in the bottom, would run out of there, and it would be pushed out by the new fuel. Moving into here, from the factory, this would have been a cotton yarn looking element, auxiliary fuel filter they call it. So the fuel would flow out of here, into your auxiliary, out of your auxiliary, into your primary fuel pump here, which then puts the fuel under pressure, no longer running on gravity, through your final fuel filter, which is a cartridge style, into your injection pump. Gauge on the side here reads the pressure coming into your pump on the back side of the primary pump. So if this reads low, it's an indicator that either your primary pump is not providing ample pressure, or it's not getting enough fuel for some reason to be able to do so. So make sure your filters are clean. Make sure that inside your water separator here, there's actually a, I believe it's brass screen that is really fine in itself, but for some odd reason that always seems to clog before the fuel filter is on mine. It catches a lot of the dirt, a lot of the grime, so it doesn't even make it into the first fuel filter. But the easy way to tell is because this glass, the level of fuel will be low because it will not be able to transfer from here into the fuel filter. The convenient thing is, if you need to empty out your fuel filters, you got 2 petcocks on the bottom here you can open and drain the system. Just make sure that your fuel at the tank is turned off, otherwise you'll be draining all the fuel out of your tank as well. Now there's 2 models of injection pumps. You're going to have your A and your B pump. This particular one on the 450 is a B pump. You can tell that because it has an IH on the side of the injection pump. If it's an A model, it'll have an A on the side cover here. The A models had a scavenging valve right about here, I believe, that there are some O-rings on there that can go bad, or the scavenging valve itself is sticking. So all you need to do, take yourself a 1/8-inch pipe, a small nipple or something. I use brass just that way it doesn't chew up the threads if something would happen to strip. Thread it onto there. I take a pair of vice grips, snap onto it, and then pull it out that way. Pretty much all the ones I've taken apart have all been sticky. Now when your scavenging valve is bad, or it's sticking or whatnot, it will fill your injection pump with diesel fuel. So the diesel fuel from the system will end up into your oil sump for your injection pump. Sometimes it can get so bad that you have fuel running out your filler. Another thing with the injection pump that can go bad is the front seal on the injection pump itself. Typically when this goes bad, it happens in tandem with your scavenging valve, and you end up with fuel inside your oil pan. So if you end up with diesel inside your oil pan, it's the front seal in here. To do that, it's not a tough job, just takes time. Pull the front cover, pull your injection pump out, replace the seal. It's right there at the front. Not a hard job to replace that seal. And I'm thinking that's really about it for getting these things started. Yes, you can start them on diesel. I prefer not to, just because they were designed to start on gas. That's what I prefer to stick with. Try to get them, seemingly if they always run on gas, it's easier to make them run on diesel, because if they don't pick up on the diesel side, then you can go ahead and kick it back to gas. Use that opportunity to let the engine rebuild itself and then try it again on diesel. And also too, if you're trying to bleed your fuel filter, if you would drain your fuel system, I've always had these bleed by gravity. They bleed pretty quick. Close this bleeder up, start the tractor, and be ready, because sometimes within 5 to 10 seconds this one will be full of fuel and it'll be spraying fuel everywhere. So as soon as you start the tractor, make sure that you are ready to close this as soon as fuel starts to push out of it. I've had several as well. Inside here, the 4 plungers for each injector, they tend to stick. The other 450 I have, you might hear it in another one of my videos, it's got a little bit of a tap. Each injector is getting fuel, but one of them is not quite getting a shot of fuel that it needs to make that injector fire the whole way and make the cylinder run even. So I would make the second tractor I have with a not so much sticky injector, but a sticky plunger inside the pump. So to do that, the best way I found to do it is to pull the pump. On the back side, there is a fuel line here. can't really see it, but down in there is a fuel line with a banjo fitting. You pull that off, undo your fuel line here, obviously. Undo all your injector lines. This cover pulls off, and then the block with those pistons in it comes off, and then you can free them up. And that will require a 7mm, I believe it is, hex bit with a hole in the center. Don't be like me. Don't be dumb. Don't think you're just going to drill one out. Go to Amazon, find yourself a set of security bits that are hex with the hole in the center already for 10 bucks. Save yourself a huge headache. One thing I personally like to do before I start an engine up for the first time that I have never ran before is that I go through and I make sure that all my starting valves are loose. So when you kick it to the gas side, or you can pull your intake manifold off and do it by hand, but you want to make sure that when you depress, that all of your valves, your starting valves, especially I guess number 1 up here, especially number 1, goes down and then comes up again. Because on these, typically, every single one I've seen, when the engines are locked up, number 1 is the worst, and the starting valve is always stuck on number 1. So therefore, when you kick it over to diesel, it will not run on diesel on the number 1 cylinder, because you'll still have a compression release because that valve will be stuck. So definitely make sure, find it easier just to pull all the rockers off and then test the valves with a hammer or something, try and press it down, make sure it goes full the way down and all the way back up again. For some reason, it doesn't seem like a compression release is working. Check your dog. This one has already been repaired, it's been welded, but they do break. No amount of pressure on them, they will break and then not work anymore. So definitely 2 things to check before you crank one over for the first time, if it's been sitting a while or if it's been locked up and you just got it loose. Taking a closer look at this linkage for the gas side here for your changeover mechanism. This is the little arm I was referring to that you want to make sure is loose. If this is not loose, it will not stay on the gas side. As well as if the spring is absent, broke, weak, it will not lock on the gas side either, because it will not pull this back up into the slot on this arm where it should be. So you got to make sure you have good spring action the whole way, and it puts appropriate amount of force on this little cam mechanism here. The spring is a lot stronger than you would think it is, so you can't just go get a small spring. It's actually got some pretty good tension to it. So if you get a replacement spring, make sure that it's strong enough, like I said, to hold the appropriate amount of tension against this cam mechanism. If you're having trouble with gas flow on the gas side, a couple things to check is to make sure that your vent here, there should be a vent tube on that should be open to allow your fuel bowl to vent to allow the gas to flow in. So make sure that is all clear. Another thing I found is that these carburetors are aluminum body. With modern fuels, if you let fuel sit in there, I found for even a year, it'll turn the aluminum into a paste and it'll clog everything up inside there. So pull your drain petcock off the bottom here and make sure that this is all free. If you pull this off of there and no gas runs out, take a screwdriver, push up in there, and if you get a gray pasty substance out, pull the carburetor off. Pull the manifold off, undo the carburetor, undo these screws, pull it apart, clean it out, put it back together, and it should be good. I always drain my gas because I only run my tractors twice a year. So when I'm gone for 6 months, I always drain the gas out, and then when I come back, I put new gas in. A little bit of a pain, but I've never had a problem with these carburetors. Every single time I've left the gas in there for 6 months to a year, come back from deployment or whatever, there is always that gray junk in there. It's got the carburetor all pasted up and it doesn't want to work. So make sure that your carb is clean and that your vent works. And I think that's about all I know to cover for the engines for these right now. If you have any particular questions, just go ahead and drop me a line and I will do the best I can to answer your questions. Thanks for watching.